Thank you so much for joining me today, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. So hopefully you can hear me okay, and hopefully you can see the screen okay too. Now, if we haven't met before, it's wonderful to meet you, albeit virtually. My name's Grace Mayer, and I am head of our support and our pre-sales teams over here at Somerford Associates. And I have the pleasure of working with Okta and also being one of their technical champions, which means I get kind of first dibs on some of the latest and greatest features to have a look at and learn a little bit more, which is a real honor and a pleasure. So hopefully, if you do have any questions about anything coming in the future with Okta or any of the newer features, then we can always delve into them if you have any. Now, hopefully, you are in the right place today. We're going to be doing a Okta overview, just really give you a good baseline into what Okta is as a platform, the ways you can use it, and also the ways it's benefited some other businesses, whether that's modernizing their IT infrastructure or whether that's delivering their customers a seamless integrated experience. So, what we're seeing inside of companies today is two things really. First of all, there's a lot of digital transformation and change going on. There's also a huge amount of new opportunity and new risk happening because of that. So, whether that's going into new platforms like cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, or even Google Cloud, and also making use of more and more cloud applications and application suites, which often can relieve that kind of pressure from legacy infrastructure, but also creates a whole new method of ways of, implementing permissions and different granularities. And it's all, a new process to have to learn again. Now, a lot of businesses are also still carrying a heavy burden in legacy infrastructure if they haven't moved over yet. And that can be really heavy in terms of the administration management that you might need to do on a day to day basis. We also see a lot of problems where you're in a B2C space, where controlling customer identity permissions and also really providing the right access to different sites, applications, or portals can be really difficult. And for the customer experience, it's not always the best experience for them as well. Now, Okta, we address literally every and any, sorry, identity use case, whether that's for your customer identity, if you're in a B2C place, whether it's your own workforce and your own employees, or whether you work with partners or other vendors where you need to provide access to applications or services in a B2B market. Now, Okta doesn't just cross applications. Now, with tools like Okta Access Gateway and Advanced Server Access, we can provide really robust and granular permissions and policy-based access to different parts of your infrastructure. We've always been able to do great API security as well, and we further enhance that with new features. Now, these don't have to just be on cloud applications, they could be on-prem applications or hybrid. Infrastructure might be on-premise or it might be in the cloud, like looking at VPCs and looking at the EC2s within those, and even, maybe providing permissions into certain VPCs and not others. And of course, you might have some public APIs or you might have private APIs as well. Okta is the most secure and reliable identity platform. We've got over 6,500 integrations now, and those integrations are pre-configured to basically have all of the backend stuff set up for you for their application. All you need to do is go ahead and put in your specific location of it, the org name, URL, etc. We can cover workforce and customer identity with single sign-on, adaptive multi-factor, lifecycle management, universal directory, access gateway and advanced server access, API access management, and a whole host of other authentication and authorization features. And I'll go through a little bit more into each of those different modules of Okta and how you can use them to really deliver a secure and seamless experience for your employees and your customers. And of course, if you're putting your identity into the cloud, you need to be able to trust that cloud platform. And I always say we have more attestations than you can shake a stick at. So try and get this in one breath. We've got SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, ISO 27018, CSA Star, HIPAA, and FedRAMP. And thousands of organizations depend on Okta right now. So Okta really focuses on connecting anything and everything. And often the critical challenges that we have around access management are things like passwords being reused. And then, for the administrators there, you're seeing a whole host more manual password resets having to be done. I feel like, especially because of the pandemic, a lot of businesses are feeling that really intense pressure to accelerate the cloud adoption to provide people easier access from home. But that has also created an explosion in phishing attacks. And if we look at the Verizon data breach reports of 2020, you can see that cloud attacks have risen dramatically from just the year previously. If you have any starters, movers, or leavers, offboarding and onboarding manually really doesn't scale. And trust me, because I've been there, trying to manually deprovision hundreds of accounts when people leave or start. And that really does just leave. It only takes one account being left open to be the one that ends up exposing your critical data stores. And I think a lot of businesses now, and this is driven, I think, a lot by the pandemic as well, is the fact that this focus on being able to access things when you're outside of the office actually becomes imperative. Previously, we've always relied on some kind of traditional perimeter security, and it's not saying you don't need that, because if you have things on premise or inside of your own network, of course, you still need those tools. But if you are only using those tools, then it means that if we're in a current situation like we are, although we are moving forward, for the past 18 months or so, we've all been working from home or from remote offices, things like that. Now, the problem there is that if you've always relied on this perimeter security, you are now punching holes through to allow people in, and that inherently leaves you open to more security problems. You also might have to enable access for contractors or partners, or even other vendors or outside users, and that can be really risky to manage and find a secure way to provide access to that, maybe just that spreadsheet or that application. And it can also be really difficult now with this drive to accelerate the cloud adoption process, that there is a lot of applications and services in a hybrid deployment now. And that can be really difficult if you're trying to unify your security controls and your permissions there. Now, we can resolve this first challenge with our single sign-on module, and this allows you to have up to 50% fewer resets. And I would say personally, as a business, Somerford use Okta internally, we have 100% reduction in password resets because the user can do it themselves using an extra factor. And most of the time, the only time we have to reset people is if they've lost their device or they have a whole new phone and they need to move their multi-factor over. Which brings me nicely into our next resolution, which is a way to boost your productivity and really help ease that pressure to accelerate your cloud adoption by utilizing those over 6,500 pre-built integrations in the Okta integration network, and also by leveraging more identity and pattern aware multi-factor. So it's not just a on or off kind of toggle, it's looking at the behavior of that user. Is this a normal sign on from them? Have they signed on already today? What else has been going on inside of that account? And is this usual? Shall I just ask for an extra layer of security? Lifecycle management can reduce your audit costs by, it says 50% here, but I would argue potentially even more by really helping you control those different licenses that you might have and also preventing any orphan accounts exposing any of your critical data. Now, if you focus on a more identity-driven security than a perimeter-based security, that can really reduce your attack surface and also your breach likelihood by up to 75% by allowing you to implement zero trust security models with more granular policies and also, step up authentication and privilege access management. If you do have any contractors, partners, or external users that you have to give access to, our Universal Directory is an amazing way to integrate all of those different application accounts, Active Directory accounts, service accounts, you name it, into one centralized location. Now, this gives you a whole host less IT maintenance and kind of management and administration because it allows you to have one single view of a user, their Active Directory profile, what applications they have assigned to them, any services or APIs they have assigned to them, the permissions of those, and also what policies you want to apply to that user as well. It means that if you do need to provide external access, you can make a separate group for that, make that group have access to the smallest amount of things with the highest amount of security. So asking them for MFA every time, maybe reducing their session limit to 2 hours, and creating other ways to help maintain your business's security when you are having to let potentially people who may not be as security aware in. And of course, by unifying that identity, it can really help you support that hybrid IT infrastructure and really help you unify those policies and controls that you're putting in place because you're doing them all from one centralized location. Whether you're doing that to on-prem infrastructure or cloud, because it's Okta that's asking for that extra step up, or whether it's a multi-factor security question, whatever it might be, this allows you to do that across your applications, your on-prem infrastructure, your cloud, EC2s, or anything you've got in Azure or GCP in terms of VMs. And you're all doing that through Okta, through that exact same policy, so you can make sure it's being deployed across all different areas. And we have hundreds of EMEA organizations that are depending on Okta, and you might be familiar with some of the names here, like Gatwick Airport, FitFlop even, Angie, Steeman, Starling Bank. And Hitachi and Gatwick have some great use cases, and Gatwick's especially I wanted to go through because it has a really nice focus on transition of infrastructure on premises to the cloud. Now, with somewhere like Gatwick, you might assume, they need to be always on. Their infrastructure needs to be there every single second of the day. I think we can remember back to last year, I believe it was, or maybe even the year before. COVID, I think, has made last year passed like a flash, where I believe it was British Airways were faced with a problem because their servers had gone offline and they were unable to board people to their flights. They were unable to provide people updates. It was just a complete mess. Now, Gatwick obviously don't want any problems there. They don't want any nightmare in terms of any newspaper stories that are going to come out. And they also don't want any reputational damage. So they really focus on making sure they have this always on infrastructure. Now, they were able to reduce costs and also provide identity and access management to not only their own employees, but also all of those other third party services and businesses that they work with, from cleaning companies all the way through to other flight companies that might be running in their airport. Now, they leverage single sign-on, universal directory, lifecycle management, our adaptive multi-factor, and also our developer SDKs and API access management. We also have businesses in EMEA, I was going to say in the UK, but more widely across EMEA, who are delivering better customer experiences with secure and seamless identity to provide, whether that's people who are dealing with a very well-established insurance company, looking at getting access to their insurance documents, providing documents to them, or getting renewals quotes. And also Siemens, a massive IT outfit in their own respect, who looked at providing easier mobility services and also providing people access into their customer portal is all done through Okta now. Now, Dentsu and Adobe have also done great things to reduce their risk and cost of a security incident. And Adobe are one of the biggest users of Okta today. And everything pretty much, if you're signing in or authenticating through an Adobe product, is done via Okta. So let's go ahead and actually show you Okta in action. So here I'm signing in via the web UI. Now, we also do have desktop SSO, and you can also use Okta on your mobile apps, or if you have iPads or tablets, you can also use the Okta app through there. It's available both on iOS and Android devices. Now, this is my demo account. It's all done in homage to my dog Archie, so you can see who who rules the roost here. Now, as you can see, when I put my username in here, you can see that this little image up here changes. Now, this is one of my favorite features for an end user of Okta because it prevents you from falling for any phishing attacks. Because you know that if this little picture doesn't change to the one that you select, and you select it when you're setting up your profile, then you know that you're not in the right place for your applications, that maybe it's somebody who spoofed it, or maybe you've just accidentally, put one letter wrong and accidentally tried to sign into a different org. Just going to hit next, and I'm going to ask it to verify my identity, and it's going to ask to send a push notification as a extra factor through to my phone. Now I'm just going to accept this on my phone here, and it's going to send that back through and sign me in. Now, what's amazing here is that you didn't see me enter a password at any time, and that's because with the policy that I have on my account, I don't need to. Now, you can always ask people for passwords at the same time. You can also ask people for additional factors, such as a security question. You could even use text message, or if you do have some older kind of token, like hard tokens that are lying around, you want to make use of them, you can also make use of those with Okta as well. Now I'm into my little workspace, my application space, and you can see that I can have different tabs here and add different sections. I'm lazy and I just have one called work. Now, as you can see, I have access to a whole host of different applications, whether those are Office 365 based apps. And what's great about Okta is the fact that we can actually go ahead and assign licenses to different parts of Office 365. So you're never going to be faced with that kind of problem where the user doesn't have a license to use that product, but they've gone in and tried to access it through Okta and it's kind of gone haywire and they contact you assuming that they would be able to get in. Unfortunately, they didn't have access in the first place. And sometimes that can be a little bit confusing to the user, especially if they can see it in their account portal or whatever way that they access their application. Now, a really common application for pretty much most organizations with Okta is Salesforce. And as you can see here, Salesforce uses a SAML authentication to go ahead and sign me in. And now you can see I'm into my dev space with Salesforce straight away with no problems, and I'm into my home area. Now, because we're using SAML as an authentication method there, we can actually do automated provisioning and deprovisioning. Now, you can also do the license management with Salesforce and a whole host of other applications as well. But some of the most common ones that you can really gain some cost back and reduce your cost is with Salesforce and Office 365 because the licenses are quite costly on a monthly basis, and also because those licenses do tend to hang around and not be used without realizing, really. Now, if I jump into the admin portal of this demo instance here, I can go ahead and actually show you what that Salesforce application looks like on the back end. So I'm going to jump into my application directory here, and you can see all of the different applications I have active. I'm going to come into Salesforce. Now you can see that actually a few users have been failed to be created, and this is because I've actually broached my limit. So 3 users is your limit in terms of the developer Salesforce. So it made a couple of users for me automatically, Big Les and Mike Nolan here, and then it's gone ahead and actually made those accounts in Salesforce for me. Those were accounts I only had in Okta previously. However, we can see that we've got some assignment errors here as well. Now you can imagine if somebody Here, if I had called in and said, hey, I can't access Salesforce, we can go ahead and see straight away it wasn't assigned this application before provisioning was enabled, and it's not been provisioned in the downstream application. Now, I can't actually provision myself right now because I have the active users already running, so I'd need to go ahead and maybe delete a couple of them before I could go ahead and enable myself. But what I really wanted to show you was the way that we can do provisioning into Salesforce, sorry, from Okta. Now, as you can see here, this is my provisioning settings for Salesforce to the application. Now, I've allowed Salesforce to create users when they are assigned that app in Okta, and assignments can be done on an individual basis or on a group or rule-based policy as well. We've enabled it to update our user attributes and also deactivate users. And you can also sync the password if you'd like to here, which will go ahead and recreate a password for each user and then push it into Salesforce. If you've ever had users have access to applications such as Salesforce directly before, this is a really, really great way to prevent them from ever being able to gain access, either by trying to sign in directly to the application or by resolving any problems that they might have with writing that password down. Maybe it's been historically in some notebooks far long ago. At least if you can go ahead and change it, then that's essentially just rubbish now. You can see all of the different attribute mappings it's pulling in. So here it's pulling in first name, last name, email, and group profile settings, even their employee number if I wanted to map it. Now we can also do provisioning back from Salesforce. So if you did want Salesforce to be kind of a master of how people are creating an account in Okta, and if you already have maybe some users in Salesforce that don't currently have Okta accounts and you want to map those in, this is a great way to do it. So basically it's saying, if I look at Salesforce and I import the users and I see that they have a match on their first name, I'm going to go ahead and bring them in. Now, this probably would be a little bit broad brush in a normal place. It's very common to have more than one person with the same first name. So you can do a combination of matches, and you can also say, I don't want to auto confirm them, let me manually review them as well. You can also allow Salesforce here to source Okta users, and this means that it takes control of the user profiles and makes sure that all of the attributes are actually whatever was in the Salesforce profile. We've also got in some safeguards here to prevent against any accidental assignment of any applications. Now, as you can see, because this application was from the Okta integration network, it's literally got everything here set up for me. And all I needed to do was put in my custom domain, the seats that I had, which is none, and also the sign-on options that I wanted it to do. So, for example, do I want it to sign in automatically if I just look at the page? Would I like the application visible to users? And also, would I like to provide a note for end users? So if you have an application that says that you say only accessible if you have a VPN turned on, you can do that really easily and simply. Just display a little message and say, hey, just make sure you've got your VPN on before you click this. For sign-on methods here, we're using SAML 2.0, as I mentioned before. Now, although most of the applications in the Okta integration network are now using SAML, there are a few that are still using secure web authentication, which is like that password injection piece. And we also have some that are also using federated identity services for applications such as AWS or Office 365. And here again, we can see how we're assigning people manually or through group. We have C-level users and also a group for our contracting Sasquatches here at Archie's. And I would argue that Archie's a Sasquatch now too. Now, if I jump into the security here, I can go and actually show you a little bit more insight into how granular our authentication policies can get. And you can layer them as well. So you can have one as your default policy and then add additional ones on if they meet certain factors. Or say if a user is new or hasn't signed in a period of time, you might just want to go ahead and prompt them for MFA. Or maybe if they're accessing a really important application with a lot of data in, a very critical app, then you might want to again maybe reduce their session limit and maybe say, okay, let's go ahead and ask them for an extra factor. Now, here's my default policy, which will apply if no other policy applies. This applies to Okta as an authentication provider. And we can see that I've got some complexity requirements for the password. We have some password age checks as well, and also some lockout options. Now, we do actually allow users again here to do self-service password unlock and resets, and we only allow this by email. Now, a great option is to also have SMS enabled here because a lot of users will then go ahead and enroll their mobile, and then you can make sure that anything on there is secure as well. And it also allows you, if you have lost access to your email, you've been locked out and you don't have your email app on your work phone, or maybe you're not still logged into it, then you can go ahead and get the text message through so you're not kind of struggling to get access to that email in the first place. If we look at the sign-on policies here, we now have a few other rules that are assigned to these groups. And we actually have our default policy, which is just to allow everybody access. And then we have one which is C-level extra secure. Now here we're verifying people with Okta Verify Push only. So you saw that when I signed in that it asked me to go ahead and authenticate via my phone and accept the push notification on my device. This means that basically you won't be authenticated if you don't have access to that. And if I open up the everyone else, it's going to say don't exclude any users. Go ahead and prompt for a factor every session. The factor will be good for 15 minutes, and then the session lifetime is 2 hours. So here you can say, how often you'd like people to re-authenticate, and if there are any prompts that you would like them to re-authenticate for, such as, if they change screen, if they open it up in a new tab, or whatever it might be. Now, just jumping into our multi-factor options, we've talked about them a lot today, the different options that you can use, such as Okta Verify, like I did earlier, through push, whether you want to just use a integrated application such as Google Authenticator, or even if you have some of those hard tokens from before, like secure IDs or Symantec tokens there, or even if you just want to do something as simple as a security question or even sending them an email and say, hey, use this code in this email. Now you can force enrollment. So here we have that everybody has to enroll in Okta Verify with push. That's because we use that to sign on. And what this will do is basically the first time a user signs into Okta, it will go ahead and say, hey, you need to enroll in Okta Verify. Please scan this QR code to set it up, and then it will all be done for you. It's really easy and only takes maybe 10 to 15 seconds from start to finish. And then you can make sure that your users do have that factor enrolled on their phone. And it also means that there are no kind of loopholes or any way that they can fall outside of that flow. Now, there is a great system log as well in Okta. Of course, everything is fully auditable and traceable. And this can also be shipped out to another SOC type tool or SIEM tool if you do want to. It's really, really easy to send data into things like Splunk from Okta. And there is also a Okta application on Splunk base free of charge. So you can get reports, dashboards, and alerts for your identity data pretty much straight away. So I know that has been a little bit of a baptism of fire of Okta, and I don't want to bombard you too much. I just wanted to leave some time for any questions that you might have about the Okta platform, maybe any of the ways that we can integrate with users or applications, and also if you have any questions about new products coming out. Okay, I think that's all the questions for now. Um, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a little bit more about Okta, how it works, and also how you can use it to help your business deliver a more secure and also seamless experience for your workforce and your customers. If you have any further questions after this, please feel free to get in touch with me. I will put my email in the chat box there. And of course, if you do want a one on one demo of Okta, or maybe you just want some time to ask some questions one on one, please feel free to reach out for me for that as well. I'll go ahead and close the session off here, but just wanted to wish you a wonderful rest of your week and thank you so much for joining me today. Take care.